How's your chickens, Daniel?
Well, I actually broke my fast yesterday, so I can stop thinking about eating them. So that's a positive. But yeah, I have a great view here. I will mute myself when I'm not talking. But
Okay.
yeah. So otherwise, yeah, just happy to be eating again.
Hmm.
And I've done what you suggested. So every hour I take 5 minutes, like at a fixed time of the hour. So at the start of every hour, I take 5 minutes to do anapanasati.
Hmm. Well,
And
even though you're in a completely different environment, the issue would be the same because we are all caught in that frame of reference that we're supposed to do a good job. We're not supposed to screw it up. We're not supposed to make mistakes.
yeah,
Yes, but that's a dangerous thing because if we're not supposed to make mistakes, then we think, oh, this was not a mistake. And if we have the idea this is not a mistake, then that means that we can't learn anything from it. Okay, and so um, there's quite a number of things in the sutras about this, with the understanding that if we are here to remove dukkha and come into a state of dukkha nirodha, then the only way we can do that is by seeing things the way that they really are. And in this case, a screw up is a screw up. And that's okay. It's okay that this is a screw up because now I can be honest with myself about it being a screw up rather than being in a state of denial. And not only that, but then the worst part of it is that we will try to cover it up. If we don't want it to be a mistake, we'll kind of hide it or cover it up, and we'll be the two Pali words for this, by the way, is Hari and Opata. Hari and Opata are two Pali words that basically mean shame or shyness or embarrassment is the Hari, and the Opata, uh, Otapa, I think. I'm pronouncing it wrong, is actually the feeling of guilt for having done something wrong. Now, guilt is a very much more, let us say, for the meditator, for ordinary people, it's the worst because we got caught. We tried to cover it up because we were shy, and it got exposed anyway. And so now we feel guilty for having been caught at what we're doing. Okay, and so that's when people feel bad. But for the practitioner of anapanasati, that guilt is actually the motivating factor to fix things.
oh, yeah, definitely.
To fix
That's
things,
what got me started.
right? And this sequence will go on for cycles and cycles. There is a third one. And the third one we will call wisdom, which means that we can see in advance that I'm about to screw up. That's where the real learning comes in, is to recognize
Anna,
that I'm about to screw up and then I don't. And so this is where we're heading for. But if we already have told ourselves, oh, I should not screw up, I'm not supposed to, we're already screwing up right then and there because we're worried about screwing up. And so, if we can take that worry about screwing up out of it and say it's okay to screw up, it's okay to make mistakes, it's okay to do it wrong, because we can just call that, oh, that's just plan A and we've got plan B. Or we can think of it of, oh, let me look at this closely. This is a learning experience.
well, yeah, I can do that if it only is important for myself, but like especially when I screw things up for other people, that makes it really difficult for me to accept it. Or
Well, actually, in that regard, screwing up for other people is probably not so much of an assignment or a task or something. It's rather that when we're interfacing with someone, interrelating with them, and then that's the possibility of the bad feelings. Then, in fact, generally, um, our behaviors, our actions, even though they speak louder than words, the screw ups will almost always happen when we're talking about it before we do it, or just talking about it. Because why? Because we're talking about it because we already care about it, and because we're caring about it, we're going to go talk to people about it. And if they don't have the same opinion of me when I care about it so much, I'm going to make them care about it too. And that's when we give them dukkha, is when we want other people to care about things as much as we do. In fact, this gives rise to all of the problems that you find in society, like uh, passing laws or hypocrisy or the preacher telling the people in the congregation, don't do this and don't do that, while he's not capable of avoiding doing this and that. And so then when he gets caught at it, the people want him to leave and don't want him to be their preacher anymore. Okay, so this is the problem that we have in that. So now we're defining it in two ways. One is screwing up an object, an event, making mistake, driving accidents, any of that kind of stuff, which is a little bit different than talking to people. And generally, uh, the worry that we have is about not doing a good job, that we get confused about how to deal with bosses. That in fact, I normally, when we talk about this with students about the jobs, I mentioned that being friends with the boss is more important than doing a good job. Doing a
that's
good,
very
yeah,
true.
being
Yeah,
friends with
people.
the
Yeah.
boss is more important than doing a good job.
Well, in the sense of keeping your job, I would agree. But in the sense of actually doing your job, that's debatable.
Well, um, most of the work that's done in our society is irrelevant anyway.
Yeah, I noticed that.
It's irrelevant. Most jobs don't need to be done. The human race would be better off if about 90% of the things that are done in business just weren't done at all.
What about building
Okay.
computers so that you and I can speak?
Well, um, for me, because I don't have any pressure on it, I can let a broken machine stay broken for a day or two because I don't care about it. In the old days, every time something would go wrong, I'd have to fix it because I cared about it. Now I don't care anymore. And oftentimes the
Yeah.
machines will fix themselves. That I was confused. I thought something was wrong when in fact there was nothing wrong. It got on by itself. And so that has then back to do with the caring. If we care about doing a good job, that will then mean that we are worried about it. And if we don't care so much about it because it's okay to screw up or it's okay to leave things undone, then in fact you're talking about computers, most computers are left unused most of the time. Even a cell phone is used only part of the time. If people used a cell phone all the time, their life would be possibly quite miserable. And so the cell phone can remain unused.
So how do you start not caring? Like, because I heard in your talks like about the survival instinct, and like the caring ultimately comes from I have to do my work to get my food and everything, but in the end I'm going to survive anyways, even if I don't have the work. Like intellectually it's pretty easy to see, but the feelings are still coming up, and the thoughts and everything. So how?
Exactly right. Okay, so that's an important point. I would say then that the intellectual thing is the correct thing. That's almost always true. That the intellectual thing is correct and the way that we feel is incorrect because that's coming out of the past. We developed those feelings when we were children, when we were victims. So if you're dealing with the reality of the situation, then when those feelings come, we've got something on our side to deal with it. You know what that is that we've got on our side? Reality.
Okay. I
We've
thought
got
reason.
reality. Yes, we've got reality in the sense that you can start then talking to yourself about the reality in a nurturing way. Oh, you don't have to feel that way because the reality is that you're safe right now. So we don't have to invent dangers, which we often do. If we feel afraid, then we have to figure out what we're afraid of, right? If we feel fear, then we need to find out what it is that we're afraid of. And there we go down that rat hole of looking at this reel and looking at that reel, et cetera, like that, trying to find out where the problem is. And really, there is no problem. Reality is okay. The only issue that we have to deal with is the feelings.
And that's
Right?
the point where it's getting hard, because it feels like resistance, always like not believing yourself, like running into a wall, in the sense of like it feels like such a big distance to achieve it, instead of like just a moment and replacing it with a deep breath. So the deep breath doesn't work as I want it to be.
But if you do, you see, if you do have the thought that the reality is that everything is okay, at least in that moment of thought, you did feel okay. And then the feeling comes back. And so the right thing to do again is to remind ourselves again that everything is okay. And then the feeling of fear will come back, and then we'll nourish it again. Everything is okay. All right. And so the way that I see that, the example that I'm taking right now is the dogs who are barking. No, there's no problem. The guy who's coming is not a problem at all, but they're out barking. And if I'll yell at them one time, hey, shut up, no problem, then they'll stop. But then they'll start barking again. But this time, when they're barking, it's not with such ferocity. Okay. And so I'll say something again. All right. But then getting down to the puppy, that she'll go woof, and I'll say, shut up. And she'll wait a minute, then, or not a minute, but 2 seconds. And then you say, woof again, you know, and she's testing me. All right. So in that relationship, we have also with the mind, that the mind can be full of fear. Just woof, 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 woof. And we say, wait a minute, there's no problem here. Everything is okay. And the dog will stop. The barking that we do inside will stop for a second, and then it'll start up again, but not with the same ferocity but it comes back. And instead of then just going with that, we can remember again everything is okay. And sometimes we have to get in that dialogue with the dog inside that barks, and we say, everything is all right, be quiet. And then it barks
Uh,
again, everything is all right, be quiet. And then it barks again, but it doesn't keep barking, but it barks long enough to get frustrated by it. And then it quits because now we're out of the fear into frustration. And
Can
so,
I ask a question about that?
uh-huh.
About the it's funny that you mentioned this because here at the monastery at the Wat we also have a couple of dogs, and sometimes I see the monks like correcting the dogs and like hitting them, not really in a bad way, just like a correction.
Mm-hmm.
But so do you also do that?
Yes. It's
But
part of the
why?
training, and that when the human babies or children are trained, they already have learned a language that the dogs don't know. And so often when we're training the dogs, we have to train them in a language that they know.
But
And one of
why?
the languages that they know, in fact, the right way to think about it is that dogs, like most animals that are draft animals or let us say at least mammals, we can use the carrot and the stick. Okay. And so
Yeah,
to train a dog for a new uh, task, we can train it by giving it food. You see, in fact, professional dog trainers, they keep treats around all the time so that they, if anything that the dog does that they like doing, then they'll give that dog a treat, right? But a regular person can actually treat the dog by giving him love, but the treat is the same thing. And then there's also the stick, and that we do also use the stick in training the mind. It's not just the nurturing of the mind, but even if that doesn't work, that there is actually parts in the sutta about 5 different ways to reflect upon, oh, that kind of thought is dukkha. But if the thought keeps coming back, then there is the stick that we can use on our own mind. And that stick, then, the Buddha talks about it in the sense of putting your tongue to the roof of the mouth and clenching your teeth and demanding that you think about something else. Well, guess what? When you're paying attention to things like clenching your teeth and putting your tongue at the roof of the mouth and pushing to get that thought out, while you're doing that, that thought couldn't possibly cohabitate with all that tongue pushing and the teeth clenching. Okay.
yeah.
And when you stop doing the teeth clenching and stop doing the tongue at the roof of the mouth, then the thought may come back again. That's just how
Yeah,
they are. And if it does, then we can do that little thing again. The
but
point is that if we're going to be training the mind, we need to be persistent, and that most of the time we're going to use the carrot. The carrot is the right way to do it most of the time. And that is to nurture the mind to present that this reality is okay. Everything is all right. There's no reason to be afraid. And so this is when we can bring the breath in to take a couple of deep breaths and just relax. Because whatever it was that we had on our mind is not that important. Because it's not that dangerous. It's not fatal. Sometimes things are fatal. Like standing in the middle of a freeway, that could be fatal. We need to stay out of really dangerous situations, but now that we know, like for each one of you, are in a safe, secure environment. Why do these thoughts that bring on fear and jobs to do come up when there's really, the reality is that we're safe? The answer to that is that it's an old habit, an old program. And so if we let that habit run, if we let ourselves worry, then we're just reinforcing that old habit. But the way that we're practicing is to break it up. When we see those thoughts as unwholesome, that should be enough for us to abandon them. Because we don't care about unwholesome things anymore, and we don't care about being in unwholesome states, but we do care about something that's wholesome. That, in fact, that's something that's important for us to also recognize, that some things are worth attaching to. That, in fact, the Buddha talks about it. And there's a sutta by the name of One Fortunate Attachment. And it's number 131 in the Majjhima Nikaya, where he's actually talking about that one of the things that's really worth holding on to and clinging to is this present moment. Another thing that's worth holding to and clinging to and becoming enthusiastic is about the Dhamma. So in this regard, we're thinking, oh, we can actually extend that to wholesome things. Once something is wholesome, it's okay to attach or to cling to it, so long as it remains wholesome. In the example of the Dhamma, when we're thinking about the Dhamma, we're applying the Dhamma to this present moment, but we can also try to apply the Dhamma to other people by telling them what to do, and we wind up being hypocrites ourselves. We give other people orders to do what I should be doing right now.
Oh, that's recognizable.
Right. So, in that regard, then whatever we're clinging to that's wholesome is no longer the issue, because now we're trying to be the boss and order other people around. So this is basically, when we're talking about clinging to the wholesome, we're talking about within one's own mind.
Okay.
Within one's own mind. Not that we're trying to get other people to do the right thing. It's that there are some things that are worth holding on to, becoming enthusiastic about. That, in fact, the Dhamma is something that really is worth hanging on to. And so when we recognize, oh, I can choose what I care about, that I couldn't choose what I cared about because I got in the habit of caring about stuff when I was younger. But I'm not young anymore. Now I'm a grown up, and I can choose to care about the things that I want to care about. That's the reality of the situation. So always, Marcel, reality trumps bad feelings.
Okay.
Reality trumps bad feelings, but sometimes you have to trump it over and over and over again. It's going to be a long card game. But
Yeah.
always, but always, reality trumps bad feelings.
Okay. I'd like to go back
So-
to the Daniel.
Go ahead, Marcel.
Okay. To the dogs and the sticks example, like, when do I know which sort or which situation needs a carrot and stick? Which situation needs a carrot and which situation needs a stick? For example, the work thing is like, sometimes I dream about it and I notice the first thought in the morning is work and like doing this and having to do that. Is this like a stick situation, like piss off, or is it like, it's okay, you're here, but reality is different?
Well, actually, there's several ways to approach that. One of the ways of saying is that the stick is the last resort. That it's carrot, 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 at least 4 carrots in a row before we use the stick.
Okay.
Okay. Now, the stick actually has a sutta about it. It's called the cowherd, and the story is that this cowherd now, not like the rodeo or the cattle drive where you've got a few cowboys on a few horses rounding up herding hundreds of cattle, but rather this is the time of the Buddha, where this guy maybe had a half a dozen or so cows. That was his life. And every morning he takes them out and goes down a pathway to the place where he knows that they can graze. But along the path is a village or an outcrop of humans that have some houses, and they have their food stalls, and the kids are around and whatnot like that. And if he lets those cows run amok in that village, they're going to be unhappy with him, maybe want to take one of his cows for the damage that the cow has done, something like that. And so he's got a job to do to make sure that the cows get through the village without doing any damage. And so he has a stick, and he is walking in and among the cows. He's right there with them. And if a cow tries to get a carrot off of a table or something like that, he'll whack that cow with that stick. Right? This is the reality of it. Okay? That you got to get the cow's attention by whacking them. If you just rub their back a little bit and says, "Oh, don't eat that carrot," the cow's going to be munching on that carrot, right? And so the cow herd has to whack the carrot or whack the cow to keep them in line. Now, once the cows have passed through the village and are out in the pasture, the cow herd does not have to stand with the cows anymore, whacking them. Now he can relax. In fact, he can go sit under a tree and let the cows graze by themselves. And this, by the way, is a story that's in Sutta number 19 in the Majjhima Nikaya. And the name of the sutta is Two Kinds of Thoughts. Okay, so now that the cow herd has the cows out in the pasture, he doesn't have to work so hard to keep them wholesome because they're eating wholesome now. But when he was in the village, he had to guard them. He had to guard them, and he had to whack them, and had to keep them on the straight and narrow. But after he gets out of the village, now he can let them. He can relax himself because the cows are doing wholesome. So we could use this in the sense of that when the mind has wholesome thoughts, one wholesome thought after another, we can really relax. But while we're going through the village of the mind like that, then things are attractive to us, and we'll think about this and think about that and want to go do this and go to do that. That's what advertising is all about. Okay, so one of the ways to handle that is by not paying attention to any advertisements, to guard the eye door. So if the cows didn't look at the food, then they wouldn't be tempted for it. If the cows had their heads down, then they wouldn't see it. And so that would be easy to get them through the village. But unfortunately, that's not how it is. And so when we're in the process of moving through unwholesome thoughts, we have to actually whack them. That's the stick. Now, we can whack them without whacking the mind hard.
So it's a happy whack.
It's a happy whack, but it's a hard whack. It gets their attention. You have to get the attention of the mind that way. Okay, so no, I'm not going to think about that. I'm going to turn that subject off and come back into the reality of the moment. And sometimes we have to do that over and over again. Some mornings you have to do a whole lot of whacking on those cows to get them through the village.
Okay, so the mindset is like returning to the present moment instead of pushing away, because for me it felt a little bit like not nurturing and a little bit unwholesome in the sense of like pushing thoughts away or like
right. That oftentimes
bad.
Right, exactly. We don't have to hurt the cow or to kill the cow in order to get it to behave. You just get its attention. Okay, so this is also part of the quality of putting the tongue to the roof of the mouth and clenching the teeth with the intention of, I'm not going to be thinking about, example would be that girl, or I'm not going to be thinking about taxes, or I'm not going to be thinking about that cop that just stopped me. I'm just not going to talk about it, not going to think about it. And so the thought comes back. And we treat it the same way that it did when it came the first time. It's the practice of doing it over and over and over again, knowing that every time that we do it over and over again, several things are happening. That could be way of looking at it would be that we're developing the skill. The other one is a way of looking at it is that we're taking some of the energy out of it, that the cows are reluctant now to grab food off the food stall once they've been whacked a couple of times today. And so that's the way to do it. But the important one, which we already you've mentioned, is that the beginner, the very early beginner in the practice, when they catch the mind wandering away, the way that Goenka talks about it is when the mind wanders away, never mind, start again. At that never mind point is actually the sati that comes up. When we recognized that the mind has wandered away into hindrances, we don't start again. We punish ourselves. We stay in hindrance by punishing ourselves. Oh, you monkey mind, oh, this is hard work. Oh, I can't do this. Oh, those thoughts keep coming back. Oh, poor me.
Yes, exactly. That's the attitude of like, oh my God, and if you notice more and more thoughts, like the more you do it, you notice more and more shitty thoughts being there and coming up and more nuances of them and whatever. And it's hard to keep the attitude in the sense of like, wow, I'm doing this and I'm getting better at and seeing more nuances of like all this practice. And it's easy to shift into, oh my God, I can really see the pile of shit now and it's getting bigger. And yeah.
Yes, that's exactly what happens with the mind. But guess what? It's not getting bigger, it's getting smaller. But because it's reoccurring and we don't like it, we don't want it to be there, we feel victimized by it. Yet once again, oh, there it is, and it's big again. But the reality of the situation is that every time I tell the dogs to shut up, they do. And when they start barking again, they're not barking with near the ferocity that they were. Okay, and so the mind is also like that. That yes, those unwholesome thoughts will keep coming back, but if you're there to nurture them and to give them guidance and occasionally whacking those thoughts, then the energy will slowly come out of them. And remember again that the energy that those thoughts have is based upon how much you care.
Yeah.
Buddhadasa mentioned that the more you care, the more it's going to hurt. There's another part in that is that when we begin to develop the skills, we're beginning to see dukkha that we didn't see before.
Yes.
And because of that, we think that, oh, there's new stuff, or this is never ending. It's almost like a cook who, once they have the kitchen clean, they expect the kitchen to stay clean while they're cooking. And that doesn't happen. Kitchens get dirty. That's the quality of cooking food is the quality of, kitchens get dirty, plates get dirty, pots and pans get dirty. And we have the duty, if we're going to be cooking the Dhamma, we're going to wind up with some dirty plates. And just knowledge of the dirty plates is not enough. When you see how dirty that plate is, we say, oh no, I can't handle this anymore. Oh, that plate's too dirty.
Yeah.
This thought's too much.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I can do it until the level of, okay, I'm having like an easy day in the sense of like, let's say I'm having a holiday, like it's a Sunday, and the Sunday is labeled as easy, but the work day is labeled as hard. And then, oh my God, I can't do it on work days, but I can do it on Sundays. And that's exactly the sort of like, it's too much, it's too hard. Yeah.
So that's a very important thought to recognize. This is too much. This is too hard. There it comes again. because we say that out of that victim's position,
Yes.
that we've already changed from being the winner back into being the victim again, saying that this is too hard. So the reality is that it's not too hard. That's just a feeling that it's too hard, that this is too much. But you've already got all of these years' experience of practice, and you know that it's not too hard, that it's not too much. If
Yeah,
whatever
that's the
thought
funny
this
part.
is, it's just a thought.
Yeah.
I find it so strange how you can really get into that attitude of winning,
Hmm.
and then when you lose it again, it's like you totally forgot what it was like
Yes.
to be a winner. And when you're a winner, you totally forgot what it was like to feel like a victim.
Hmm.
That's so strange. Like meditation sometimes feels like a dream. It can be very good or very bad. Well, usually pretty good,
Right.
and then you forget it.
And it's important to recognize that these things are all on a cycle. This is what the Buddha talks about, and this is what is known as samsara, the cycle. And the cycle would be that every day that the cow herd gets up, he has to take the cows through the village, and every day the cows are trying to get the carrots off the food stall, and every day he manages to get them through the village out to the pasture, and then every day he can sit down under the tree and just watch over the cows because they're doing wholesome now. Okay, so we can also see then that those cycles happen. And you mentioned it, Marcel, that on Sunday you feel okay, but then the next day or so, and when you're involved with all of that stuff, it triggers things and you go back into the other part of the cycle again.
Yes.
Okay, if we are okay that we are in those cycles, all we have to do is recognize that those are the cycles, and that we can nurture ourselves by and comfort ourselves because we can see the cycles, because our only other option is to hate it when we're in it,
Yes.
right? And so now we can recognize everything is in cycles. That sometimes you feel like a nut, sometimes you don't. You probably heard me say that.
Yeah.
Okay,
And I
this
saw
is
the
what.
ad finally, where it's from.
Uh-huh. And so now we can do that investigation to recognize that, oh, I do not have to fall into the victimhood when that stuff comes up again.
And the cycle is pretty fast, right? Because sometimes it's like 5 seconds of sitting under the tree and then the cow escapes and wants a carrot again. And like, so it's not like cycles of a day, it can be cycles of 10 seconds, 5 seconds.
Right. That we have to understand that various things have various cycles. Like, for instance, what makes music is various frequencies. But what makes noise is various frequencies. What's the difference? Okay, the difference is that we can detect and hear this frequency because it's long enough to see it, but with noise, it's kind of all over the place. It's random in a way that we can't follow, but we can follow music even though the frequencies are changing. So this example then helps us understand that some of the things that happen are on 25,000-year cycle. Sunspots are on 11-year cycle. Days are on a 24-hour cycle. Well, almost. Um, and we think about it from the perspective that some cycles are long, some cycles are intermediate, and some cycles are down to the second or the mind moment level, and then some cycles are much, much faster than that. That in fact the speed of light is determined by a kind of a cycle that's going on, that there's causality and a cause and effect. That in fact you can think of that in the sense of the cause and effect is a cycle. Just like this domino will fall, and it touches the next domino, which will fall. And so you can see the cycle of the dominoes falling one at a time, one by one, in a cycle of things. Okay, and it's really beautiful to start recognizing these cycles that we're in. We have mental cycles, we have cycles of hunger, we have cycles of pain, we have cycles of all kinds of things. But the one that seems most now, which is actually quite beautiful, because before our cycles of dukkha lasted a long time.
Yeah.
Now we're beginning to speed up those cycles because we're catching it and coming out of the dukkha, but it's going to come back. And then we catch it and put it out again. And then we catch it and put it out again. That's the whole quality of the repeat, over and over and over again, because the dukkha is going to keep coming back as long as there's still energy left in it. And we look how many years we put into the habit of being unwholesome. And guess what? It doesn't take as long to come out of it as it did to get stuck into it and stay stuck into it.
It takes as long, you said?
Well, we're actually in the practice. Part of the skill that we're developing is to speed up those cycles, especially the cycles of seeing what's going on. That sati actually has three qualities to it. The first quality is how often does it occur. The second one is how strong is the sati. And then the third one is that when we're in the mode of sati, how often, or let us say, how fast does it keep coming back? Is our sati now getting really fast? So in the beginning, it doesn't happen often. It's very weak and it's very slow. And then as we practice, it becomes, it happens more often, it happens stronger, and it will stay and keep coming back over and over again. So let's look at the sati in the sense of it being strong enough. The reality is that we go into the reality of the moment. We come into the here now quite often, quite frequently, naturally. An example of that is that you're having a conversation with your friend about work at a table in a restaurant, and then the waiter comes with the food. You interrupt that conversation with your workmate to deal with the reality of the moment. The food is here, right? But if we care about that conversation, we won't stay with the reality that the food has arrived. We'll keep talking because we care about it. Okay, but the point is that we go into the reality of the moment quite often. If you stump your toe, if somebody honks a horn, if thunder happens, if something falls, those things that happen to us that bring us out of our internal memory thought process into the present moment is almost always triggered by sensory input. A light will flash. You'll smell something.
Is that then wholesome?
Well, it's just ordinary. This is ordinary, not regarding wholesome or unwholesome, but rather that the mechanism is that when we wake up, we often wake up. We wake up all throughout the day, but it's got no weight to it. That will go back to what we were doing immediately. What we need is to wake up to things strong enough so that we actually now are kicking off the right effort. We're not going to take the right effort if the sati is really weak. We come into the here now, but we don't do any investigation. We just go right back into the thinking. But with clear intention of what we're doing, that when we do wake up, we're actually going to wake up strong enough to actually look at what's happening and recognize, oh, this conversation is dukkha right now when all of this delicious food is right in front of me. But you'll see that happen a lot, that people will be in a conversation, the food will be served, and nobody's looking at the food because they're still arguing with each other.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and I noticed that in the sense of like sati comes, and I notice, okay, there's dukkha, whatever, and I'm not even putting in the effort of taking the deep breaths because I'm accepting the victimhood, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So the step, Alexa, stop. Sorry.
Okay.
Alexa, stop.
Alexa wants to join the Sangha.
Yeah.
Well, actually,
So
I'm
this
reading this book now. Oh, sorry.
okay, so to make the point then, part of the practice is when we do wake up, let's wake up strongly. Let's actually develop the skill of actually taking control of the situation and actually really know that we're in the here now when we wake up. That somebody can hand you a cup of coffee while you're playing on the computer, and you'll just take the coffee and set it down and go right back to the computer. Okay, these are physical things that I'm showing you, but we can do that also with the mind. That we come into the reality of the moment quite often, but it's not very strong, and so we go right back into what we were doing. So that's what Goenka is talking about. When the mind wanders away from the breath, and we see that, we have to actually see it strong enough to actually come back to the breath, to take the right effort to come back to the reality of the moment and be here now, taking a deep breath. Okay. And so start to start to look at that. Look at the times when you do come into reality of the moment. And that's a really excellent opportunity to finish the practice. Once we get that sati going, now we're going to take a deep breath. We're going to relax. We're going to use the right effort and clean out the mind, rather than, oh, poor me, I thought about that and now I've got to think about it some more.
Yeah.
And get into victim.
Yes.
Okay. So this is now a matter of what kind of energy that we're developing. That in fact, the Buddha talks about it in the sense of the distinction between the Eightfold Noble Path and the Sambhojana is that the effort that starts out, it takes effort, but that effort becomes energy. It becomes enthusiasm. How could we develop it that way? Well, the way that we do that is by keep coming back and actually enjoy coming back. Wow, I'm really glad that I don't have to think about that. We bring that joy in, and that takes effort when we're all depressed and getting gnawed away by our own thoughts. Yes. So this is a good point that we can make is that it happens often that we wake up. Meditators do this a lot. And then as soon as they wake up, they go right back into the hindrances. Or actually, they don't even come out of the hindrances because it takes a little effort to come out of them. So this is how we practice. No, and those also, there are some things like the cowherd knows that he's got to take these cows through the village, and so he's going to be on his toes. He's going to be ready for it. We can do that with other people. That, for instance, at work, when the boss comes, you can see him coming down the hall. Be alert. Wake up. We got to put the cows through this village right now. We're going to, be on guard or to guard the situation. So this is uh, the way that we can do it. Then is seeing that the reality of the situation calls for me to deal with it in a real way.
Yes.
Not in the magical thinking kind of way that we've done. And so there are events or triggers or anchors in the reality of the moment that are going to bring us there. And then, in fact, this is part of the way that we use the breathing, because the breathing, you got to keep breathing. And every time that you do breathe, there's just a little tiny bit of sati that comes with the breathing. But now we're going to really increase that sati and really take a deep breath. Put some effort into it.
That's what I wanted to ask you, because I've been trying to do long breathing and the short breathing. And yeah, the in breath, when I do a long breath, it feels natural. It's like letting a balloon blow up. But then the exhaling feels very forced. Like I have to actually like pull in my stomach, because otherwise it's just going to be a shallow breathing. I really, I've tried, yeah, I've experimented with the breathing, but it keeps feeling forced.
Okay. We need to take the force out of it. And so we can practice taking the force out of it. Okay. An example of what I'm meaning is that some balloons are hard to blow up. Okay, the balloons that the clowns use, the long ones that they can take and move and turn it into a little toy or something like that, those balloons seem to be really, really hard to blow up. That's why we take them and stretch them and pull them and do things like that to get that thing, because we don't have the pressure to blow up the balloon. But the important point that I'm making right now is that when we let the balloon go to get the air out of it, we don't have to squeeze or press the balloon. It's going to deflate all by itself back to a natural state. The
Yeah,
natural
but
state,
yeah,
the natural state is at the end of the out breath. This is one of the reasons why we call dying expiring, is because that's the last thing we do is we expire. We exhale. Okay, so if you understand it that way, then you can take all of the effort out of the exhale. Rather, let the exhale be more of a relaxation. So
but
the effort comes on the in breath, because we actually have to do something to draw the air in. But then at the end of that in breath, the out breath is going to be natural. Let it do its job with the only effort that we're putting into it is the intention that this is relaxing, that this out breath is peaceful. It's relaxation. And so we don't have to work at the out breath. The out breath is easy. In fact, the out breath is the most enjoyable part. To
but
deflate.
if you do it as a long breathing, then yeah, I don't understand how you could do that slowly, because then I have to like force it to be slow. I keep my
Well,
tension on my.
holding one's breath and doing that kind of stuff is not what we're practicing here. Okay, we're not practicing working at it. We don't need to work. I've heard many students say that, oh, after 5 minutes of anapanasati, I get really tired. Well, the answer to that is that they're, they're working at it. There's no reason to get tired. That it can be enjoyable, an enjoyable little bit of effort to bring the breathing in, and then relaxing on the out breath.
So it
So
doesn't matter if it's short, like 2 or 3 seconds.
um, I would recommend students get started with the count of four. 4-4-2 is a good breathing style. Okay, so 4-4-2 means 4 on the in breath, 4 on the out breath, and then 2 counts between. Now, that's actually fairly fast, but it's a good place because most shallow breathing, so you can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4 on the in breath, 1, 2, 3, 4 on the out breath, and then 1, 2 between. Later, we're going to let that go to 5-5-2, because
But
by doing that, we've changed it. You see, 4-4-2 is 10, which means we're down to already 6 breaths a minute at a 4-4-2. That's a really slow. Most people breathe shallowly, but breathe faster than that. But I've been practicing Anapanasati for so many years, I can't even practice. I can't even breathe normally the way normal people do. And when I take a breath, it takes, at least count of 4 to take an in breath.
But I also have a gap between I have a gap on both sides, not only after the out breath. Sometimes, and sometimes I don't. Like it varies. And
Well,
sometimes
we're going to be using that space after the out breath eventually to make that very long. So that we're going to be, if we do like half the speed, which would be 3 breaths a minute, we would be counting 8, 8, 4. And so we let that out breath, between the out breath and the next in breath, we let that linger. That in fact,
and what if that makes
start
you feel
noticing that after the end of the out breath, when the out breath is a really relaxed out breath, that the mind tends to stop. That this is actually part of the instructions for getting into second jhana is that we get the breath. First off, we get the mind wholesome. We do not allow it to go into unwholesome. This is the first training. And that's where most of the students are, is to get it to where it will train for the wholesome, to get the breathing and the breath and the mind together with the breathing, so that it's only wholesome breathing. Wholesome thoughts. So we then let's use this analogy of a wild horse that's out in the jungle, out in the canyons and all out. He has freedom, but if he's not watching where he's going to get into thickets, he's going to fall off a cliff, he's going to get boxed into a canyon, he's going to have all kinds of trouble. But if you can take a horse and put it in the pasture, then he's got good things to eat and he can't get out of the fence. So this is the way that we would want to corral our mind so that it's only in the wholesome. Ere how much the horse cares about falling off that cliff that's over there some miles away, we keep him in the pasture. And then we bring him into the corral, which means that now we're going to only have a few things to say. This is part of the reason why the monks chant. This is also the part of music that people get into, actually listening to the music, and they're not thinking about anything. The violinist will forget their cues if they're not paying attention to the music. So generally, that's one of the reasons why people have so much pleasure in playing music, is because they give their mind a rest, at least while they're playing the music. And so we practice with having only certain kinds of thoughts. And so we could corral it into the sense of only having thoughts about what the body, the feelings, and the mind are doing right now. Then we will take and put the horse into a stall. That's like having a mantra. And the mantra that I use as an example here is Buddho. Bu on the in-breath and Do on the out-breath, so that the Buddho is about the only discursive thinking, the only kind of talking that we're doing can get it down to just Bu, Do, Bu, Do. And as we relax on that out-breath, on the Do, we leave the mind quiet on that out-breath. And then we start thinking again on the next in-breath. And so this is a way of practicing getting into second jhana, is from those wholesome thoughts start to have gaps in them, and the gaps come at the end of the out-breath. And then we take another in-breath and start it back up with wholesome thoughts again. Okay, so this is the way that we practice over and over and over again to get the horse corralled. The first thing we do is we get it into the pasture. Only wholesome thoughts, only wholesome thoughts. And we'll use both the carrot and the stick to get the thoughts wholesome.
So when you do your practice, you don't actually start with the breathing. You just start with the gladdening of the mind.
Well,
If that
actually, that's correct. We can say that when we're training for the breathing, we can't train just for the breathing. We've got to train the mind. That the breathing, in other words, we're actually with the mind controlling the breath. You can't control your breathing if you're not also controlling your mind at the same time. The mind is always the forerunner for everything. The mind is the forerunner. So, um, if we can watch the breathing and slow it down, you see, that's one of the things that a lot of places have about their meditation practice is they say only watch the breath. Well, if you're watching the breath, the mind will wander away really easy that way. But if you're actually got some control over the breathing and watching the breath while you're controlling it, it can stay more focused on the breathing, can stay more wholesome.
does it have to be control, or can it also be just playing a game to make it interesting?
Well,
Because
that's controlling it, isn't it? Making it
not
interesting.
necessarily.
How controlling can you be? Making it interesting.
Well, not necessarily like making it interesting, but more like take interest in. So, for example,
Well,
catching the beginning.
taking interest in it though is controlling the mind. Rather than letting the mind just go do whatever it's going to do, you're actually taking interest in the here now. You're taking interest in the breathing. You're taking
Yeah,
interest in the body relaxing. You're taking interest in examining the body and finding where the tensions are and relaxing those. And when we start doing this with wholesome thoughts, the feelings will eventually come along. If we start telling ourselves everything is okay, everything is fine, there's no worries, there's nothing to be afraid of, and every time those fearful thoughts come back, we can keep saying, no, everything is okay right now. I'm going to sit here. I don't have to go write that email. I don't have to go fuss at the boss. I don't have to go continue that argument with Aunt Susie. That I can just do nothing right now. And the nothing then is very highly controlled. It's almost like electrifying the fence to keep the horse inside the pasture. That takes effort. Takes effort. And this is the one's right effort, is to keep putting that effort in, and the effort gets easier when our sati is strong. And so where do we practice getting the sati strong is by watching the in breath, long in breath, and then sati on the out breath. Sati on the in breath, sati on the out breath is like pumping iron. Keep doing it and keep doing it, and pretty soon the sati is going to get strong. It's a mental muscle that we're developing. And then when those thoughts come, our sati will be strong enough that we can take the effort to throw those unwholesome thoughts out happily. But sometimes we care about something so much that it keeps invading the mind and invading the mind and invading the mind. And we've nurtured it and nurtured it and nurtured it, and those unwholesome thoughts keep coming back. That then's when we do something to make sure that we're not paying any attention, that in fact we really do start to control things now. That's why we started talking about that part of the sutta, which says that pressing with strong determination, pressing the tongue to the roof of the mouth and clenching the teeth, that takes a very strong mind to do that. And while we're doing that, there's no room for any other thoughts. That in fact, that's also true of the second step of anapanasati, and that is the short breathing. Now, short breathing and long breathing both are completely controlled And neither one of them are like ordinary breath. A lot of people think, oh, the short breath is just letting the mind, the breathing go back to normal. But no, there's actually a short breathing. And you could say then that the short breathing is the emergency time. We would say that, in fact, the short breathing, remember I said 4 out of 5 times, that the 5th time is when you really bring the stick out. You put the roof of the mouth, the tongue on the roof of the mouth and clench your teeth. Well, number 4, we can look at that. And that is the short breathing. The short breathing means that we're going to intentionally breathe very short, very strong, getting the body completely energized. And it's hard to think about anything else other than the breathing when you're doing it short. When you're doing it long, there's a lot of time for the mind to bring stuff in. But when you're breathing short, there's very much little else to be able to do with the mind. So let me give you an example of that, and you guys can catch on with me on that short breath. Okay, here we
Can
go.
I just clarify one thing? And you are just during the short breathing, you are still watching it as it appears, right? So the sensations wherever they appear in your body.
Right. You get wrapped up in them completely. In fact, do this and you'll understand. Okay, so let me start giving you the short breath and you can catch up with me, okay? Come on, Daniel, let's do it. Notice you're beginning to get a little bit lightheaded. But also notice that you're not doing much of anything else other than this breathing. If you do this, you can't think of anything else. Keep going, keep going.
And you do through your nose and your mouth, right?
It doesn't matter this way. The second, in fact, both open mouth, open nose. And recognize this is all we're caring about. Don't quit. Come on, let's go.
Yeah, I'm getting lightheaded.
Uh-huh. You start getting lightheaded, and guess what? Whatever you were thinking about is gone now. Because we're caring about getting the breathing going. And it's hard to think of anything else other than the breathing when we're doing it like this. And so
Well,
this is
thinking of,
this
but not necessarily noticing.
well, there's nothing to think about because we're actively involved with breathing. We're breathing very short in the sense of maybe 1, 2 in and 1, 2 out. Maybe even 1 in, 1 out. Because that's even faster than that short breath is even faster than normal breathing. And when we're doing normal breathing, the normal that I'm talking about, a normal breathing, is not natural, but it's normal because we let it go on automatic pilot. We're not putting any interest in it at all. But here we're putting interest in it because that actually helps us stay in the present moment. Marcel, you said you'd gotten a little bit lightheaded. You like that, huh? It's energizing the body to do that.
Yeah, maybe I use that as a stick. Like
Yeah, that's a stick, isn't it? Short breathing is a kind of a stick. And it's hard to do anything else other than that short breathing when we're doing that short breathing.
It's
And so
kind of
you
hard to be aware of the body sensations when I'm doing the short
actually,
breathing.
after you slow down the breathing back to normal long breathing, That's when you investigate the body and you recognize,
Okay.
oh, while we've been doing that short breathing, the body's been doing a lot of changes. Look at it now. It's energized. It's active. We've gotten a lot of oxygen in there now. Now we can think straight. And so whatever those hindrances were, they're not so easy to come back. So we've got several skills. One is to develop the sati so that it gets strong enough that we can take the right effort to come out of it. But we can also really put some skin in the game with this short breathing. If we do that short breathing, there's very, very little possibility for those old hindrances to keep pestering you and keep pestering you. They'll only start pestering when you stop the short breathing. So the easy thing to do then, when those pestering thoughts keep coming back, that dukkha that we can't get out of the mind, is let's do this short breath. I'm making the noise just so that you can tell the frequency of the sound, or the frequency of the breathing. But you don't have to make any noise. But by making the noise, that's putting a lot of effort into it. And with that effort, it's really hard to let the mind wander away. That all you can think about is this present moment and this breath. It's hard to even think about the way we feel to the body or anything. Just keep breathing. Just keep breathing. Just keep breathing. Maybe like for 5 minutes. Just keep going. Not 30 seconds, not a minute, but 5 minutes. Because that'll get you really high.
It sure will.
It sure will. It'll get you really high if you do this for 5 minutes. And you come out of it, wow, kind of feeling. The wow, I can do that. Look, I've been doing this for 5 minutes, and look how much energy I have, and look how much I feel, and look how little hindrances are bothering me right now.
And then with step 3, we experience the whole body of the breath, right? So I just wanted to ask you, is that about experiencing the breath throughout your whole body, or does it mean that you have no moments of your
No, the
breath that
sutta
is
states
unattended
this
to?
way. No, the sutta states it this way, and that is step 3 is experiencing the whole body while you're breathing in long and experiencing the whole body while you mindfully breathe out long. That's the way that it's stated. So we experience the body while we're breathing in long and breathing out long.
Well,
But
the
you can do a
body
bit
or
of
the
that
breath,
also.
or the breath of the body?
Well,
The
that's an
body of the breath.
interesting conversation. It's an interesting conversation, actually, between Ajahn Thanissaro and Bhikkhu Bodhi. Because Bhikkhu Bodhi put experiencing the whole breath, and he puts in quotations or in square brackets, he adds the whole body.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
very
And
confusing to me.
Thanissaro says it's not there. Take the word whole body out and just watch the breath body. So where is the breath body? The breath body is, let us say, from the nose into the sinuses, down the throat, into the chest, down into the diaphragm, and into the belly. And that's the body of breathing. That's the part of the body that does the breathing. And then the rest of the body has value for watching it also, but you're not watching the body breathe. But when you are watching the body breathe, you're actually watching the body move. And so when it comes to the hands, we watch them when they're moving. So the sutta says when you're stretching and reaching, to watch your hands. This is also the walking meditation, because now we're beginning to watch the whole body as it's moving.
But
when
is
we're
it
sitting
about?
still,
Sorry, go ahead.
but when we're sitting still, we're watching mostly just the body of breath. Because, by the way, that's where all the anxiety, all the frustrations, and all of the tensions and everything is going to be registering in the body. Then, in fact, if you're thinking about having a fight with Aunt Susie, it's unlikely for your leg to cramp because of that. But anxiety is likely. And that's going to be found within the breath body.
Because I've seen it like so. For example, Ajahn Brahm, he says that experiencing the whole breath body means that you have uninterrupted attention or mindfulness of the breath,
Mm-hmm.
and that the body is in terms of the whole cycle, so that all your moments of consciousness are filled with the breath body. But that is
Right.
very different from experiencing the whole body of the breath as in a physical, the physical locations.
I think that you're making too much of a distinction or too
Okay.
wrapped up with the words, maybe. Because you cannot experience the body in any way at all without having the input of the sensations of the body. Okay? The body
Yeah.
breathes, but you only know it because you can feel the body as it's breathing. You don't feel the breathing itself. You feel the body and the body's sensations as you're breathing in and breathing out. But as you're breathing in, breathing out, those parts of the body are possibly moving to the point that the shoulders can come up, that the belly can come out, that if there's any sinus blockages and everything like that, then we need to get the sinuses cleaned out so that we can breathe well, to expel all of the crap that's in the lungs and in the nostrils and in the sinuses and all of that, and get some good clean air passage. But guess what? Most people don't think about it, and they don't look at it, and they don't notice it, and they will run around with the nose half or completely stopped up on one side or the other, and they're not even aware of it.
Oh.
But if we
Yeah.
begin to get aware of it and know that the body is stopped up with mucus, then we can expel that mucus and breathe better. And so I don't really know what Ajahn Brahm is teaching, but he's probably right. And the differences between the way that we're teaching is just you're trying to make a distinction when there is no difference.
Yeah, I thought he was referring to that as you begin your practice, that in your mind moments you will have like a lot of non-perceiving mind moments, like dull moments, and
Mm-hmm.
that as you increase your attention, as you stabilize your attention, you get more and more mind moments, and that you can then get to phase 3, or experiencing the whole breath of the body, is that all your mind moments are filled with the breath, instead of having like a lot of
Yes, that's
like
exactly right. The mind moments are filled with the body, with the breath, with what the body is doing. And when we're not paying attention, then the mind moments will be filled with good old whatever hindrances we're used to having. And so we
yeah
use the body and we use the anapanasati and use the breathing to help clean the mind out by giving the mind something else to do. And that short breathing will certainly take the hindrances right out of the mind. And in fact, it takes them out so well that they don't come back so easily. So this, Marcel, may be something of value for you when you get stuck with those unwholesome thoughts that won't go away. You can, in fact, do some short breathing, and that will force them out.
Nice. Yeah, I'm gonna try that.
Mm-hmm.
And I even noticed it working. Like when you were showing it, I noticed like there wasn't much else like place for thoughts because
Mm-hmm.
I got dizzy and
Exactly. Well, that's also true when we're engaged in an activity like, let us say, playing a game. One of the reasons why people like playing games is because it keeps them out of their worries. And they'll even tell you that.
yeah,
That's
I
one
do
of the
the same.
reasons why people are in prison, put in solitary confinement, because they're the person who's left with all their own misery to deal with. That's why it drives them crazy. But if they can get some charcoal or a piece of chalk or something and start marking the days off or do something, then it takes our mind off of all the stuff the normal state, not natural, but the normal state of the human mind is to go off into hindrances, going off into problem solving. And so we use activities then to get us out of that. We could pass our time better by playing mahjong or tiddlywinks or playing rugby or football or some sport to get our minds off of all of our worries. And so we can use that same technique with the short breath. If you pay attention and are doing the short breath, you're not going to be thinking about all your worries and cares and woes.
Nice.
What if you have okay, so you have a daughter or your wife, for example. What if they want to play a game? Would you just go along with it
I'm the one
just
who
to
normally instigates the games.
okay, but yeah, like an actual like board game, for example.
Well, we have played checkers, and I have to make sure that Kitty wins. If I start beating her every time, she doesn't want to play anymore. And so I've got to let her win. And we've also
Yeah,
played some card games. Mostly what we play is much more active games that involve the dogs. You could call it basically a
yeah.
pillow fight with dogs.
Oh, that sounds cool. So this actually ties in nicely to the question I asked all the way at the beginning, which I wanted to follow up on. Is uh, why do you do those things like training a dog or playing board games with your family or checkers or whatever? Because yeah, there's no um, like Dhamma value in it per se, and you
Oh
don't have
yes, it
any
is
cravings.
because if Tam and Kitty are fighting or talking about school or anything like that, getting them out of their mutual hindrances like punishment and all of that, I'll do something to interrupt that to make it lighter. Not necessarily with a board game, but uh, start to cheering them up.
Right. Because yeah, I have roommates back home, so I was just wondering, is it even like compatible such a lifestyle? Because I felt like yeah, they like to play games and watch movies and stuff, and like if I know like if I wouldn't do those kind of things, then maybe things would get like a little tense or something because
Well, there's
I
two
would
kinds
be
of games. First off, there's two kinds of games. There's the kind of game that have winners and losers, which is what most games are, sports, all of that kind of stuff. And then there's the games that can be played where everybody wins. The example that I was using was checkers, is that when I win, I'm the only one who wins. But if Kitty wins, then I win too.
right.
Okay, so really I learned as a child and didn't even understand it until I was like 60 years old, and that is that um, it's not the winning or the losing; it's how you play the game. And so game playing is time structuring, and it's a whole lot better to be playing games where everybody wins and feels good rather than getting into competition to where you want this guy to feel bad so you can feel good by beating him at the game. Okay, so the game then comes back to win-win, to have non-competitive games.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. And like watching a movie together just to be like present in their life and not be.
Well, right. Okay. So there's several different ways to watch a movie. The way that ordinary people watch the movie is again a pastime to get out of their words, uh, cares and woes. But we do that by identifying with one or more of the characters in the movie. And now the way that we feel is depending upon the movie. The movie actually now is directing how we feel. And there's another way of watching the movie, and that is watching the movie how it's made. That you're not interested in who's going to win or lose in here. We look at, for instance, how does the movie maker point out that this is the hero and this guy's the villain? In the old cowboy movies, the villain had on a black hat, and the hero had on a white hat. They also would have movie stars because the movie stars would always be the heroes, and you would have then supporting actors that would be the villains. And some of them got really good at being villains. And so anytime that Al Pacino shows up, you know he's going to be a villain. And anytime that John Wayne shows up, he's going to be the hero. But this is the point that I'm making is that we begin to watch movies how they're made. Look for microphones. Look for windows that have no film. Look at the driving of the car. Are they actually drive? I mean, the old movies were really, really bad about driving a car. They would have a background
They
scene and
go
people
like
just
this.
sitting on the set. Yeah, right. Okay, so how well is the movie made? How much computer stuff is in the movie? We also could see setups. That an example of a setup is that in the middle of the movie, they shoot the dog in a certain way by shooting him in the back of his head while the dog's not paying any attention. And then in the end of the movie, one of the villains gets shot in the back of the head while he's not paying attention. It was set up that way. Okay, so the another one is the Told Story, big thick book, Anna Karina or something like that. You know the one that I'm talking about. Okay, so in the first part of the book, she sees somebody jump in front of a train to commit suicide. Guess how the movie's going to end? She's going to drop on a train. Okay, so this is how we begin to understand that the directors and the people who are writing the movie are trying to direct the audience in a certain way, to feel in a certain way. But you, as a Dhamma dude, are watching what the directors are doing rather than going along with what they're telling you to do. You're watching them instead. Watching how the movie is made, how it's played out. Because that's a good way of beginning to see how those cycles of the movies actually play out in real life also. And so that's a different kind of way of watching movies. Is you don't watch them for the entertainment value, you watch them for the educational value.
But that's also, yeah, okay, I get it.
If you're going to watch a movie,
Yeah.
or you can stop watching the movies and just start watching nature. I mean, we've got trees that are moving around here, and we've got trees talking to each other.
Oh, that's actually what I enjoy. I enjoy going for long walks, especially
Mm-hmm.
with friends. It's really nice
Mm-hmm.
and loosens them up. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I was just. It's it's kind of hard to comprehend for me what life looks like once you reach that
Well, I think
kind of
part of
state.
that has to do, Daniel, with the fact that you're asking too many questions trying to figure it all out. recognizing that that's a lot. There's a lot of doubt in there, and you don't have to solve all the riddles and get all the data or information. That you could just say, I don't need to know that. I know enough.
Yeah.
Like the difference between what Ajahn Brahm and I are talking about. You don't need to know the distinctions and the differences. Just practice. Just do it. Don't
I
worry
think
about the little tiny details of the way that it's been talked about.
I think you one time said that every question is an expression of doubt.
Yes, every question is an
Yeah.
expression of doubt.
Yeah, I
And when
like
we
that one.
stop asking questions, we can be happy and comfortable without the information.
Yeah.
We can get rid of the doubt directly rather than, you see, we think that we'll get rid of the doubt by getting the information that we're doubting about. Guess what? That doesn't happen. We just
Gonna
have
get
more
more
questions and
questions.
more questions and more questions and more questions.
Yeah.
And so the right way to do it is that, oh, never mind. I don't need to know that. I know enough how to practice. I know enough. Let me practice what I do know. That's enough. Our whole society is geared around a top dog winner, winning and losing. The way that we're beginning to practice here is that we're always winning. This is good enough. This is a win. We don't have to have all of that perfect information about how to practice Anapanasati down to the finest details before we start. We'll probably get all about that anyway once we start practicing. The thing to do is just start practicing and forget about all of the questions. That in fact, the
Yeah.
questions wind up being a hindrance. Am I doing it right? Am I doing it right? Am I doing it right? These hindrances keep coming back. I must not be doing it right, you know?
It's funny because a question just popped into my mind as we were talking about
I know.
this
So when
advisor
you're
technique.
so start watching that popping.
Well, I actually do want to ask it. So how is step 3 different from step 1? Because as you explained,
Since
there's
it's
not
a
really.
process, we're just merely talking about stages. Okay? They're just merely stages. That as you're breathing long, you begin to pay attention to the body. And the whole part of reason for paying attention to the body is because the intention is to relax the body. So any tensions, I mean, you've heard students talk about they get headaches. Okay, the reason the students get headaches in meditation is because they've got tensions. If they'd pay attention to the tensions rather than paying attention to the headache, they'd relax whatever muscles need to be relaxed so that the blood pressure is back. You see, what happens is that the arteries throw all of that blood into the brain. It has to go through the capillaries and then back out through the veins. But those capillaries, especially in the neck or whatever, get tightened because there's tension. The muscles are tight. And so all we have to do is kind of relax those muscles and pay attention to relaxing the body and not pay attention to the headache. And the headache will go away by itself. Just like doing that short breathing. If we pay attention to the breathing and keep breathing and keep breathing and keep breathing, the hindrances go away by themselves. There's no room for them.
After my first Goenka retreat, I had like chronic tension here for like 3 months. Like it wouldn't go away. Like it was there every day. It was insane.
And the more you pay attention to it, the tighter it gets and the worse it
Oh,
hurts
for
and the
sure.
harder it is to deal with it.
So,
Yeah.
so did it go away, Daniel?
Sorry?
Did it go away in the end?
Yeah, it did go away, but it took a long, long time. I can tell you that.
Because funny enough, that's another question or thing I wanted to talk about is like long time ago, Dhammarato, we talked about this tension I have around my nose, around my head every time I do formal sits. And that's why it's hard to get in the 5 minutes. Like every hour I remember, okay, I could do my 5 minutes now. And I kind of want to, but sitting down on my couch or whatever and closing my eyes and doing it like brings it back up. And I did what you said, like rubbing it, trying to enjoy it, play with it, but it still keeps building up. And so what I noticed is when I do more like moving, so for example, when I shake or when I do walking meditation, it gets better, and it doesn't build up that much. So my idea was to just screw it and do the 5 minutes in whatever way I like, in the sense of like walking or listening to a song or just shaking it out. And every time I want to move, I just move, in the sense of maybe it's not the best for the practice, but at least.
Well, wait a minute. Let's put it in this perspective. If you do exactly what I tell you to do, then you're being a victim following along to get along. But if you start playing with it, just like you're saying you're doing, that means that you're now finally taking control of your own life, which is what the point of this is.
Okay. So whatever feels good, just do it.
Yeah, whatever feels good, do that. Start experiment with that. Find out what it is that's pleasurable and what's not pleasurable, and stop doing the things that are not pleasurable and unsatisfactory.
Are you maybe unintentionally looking at something? Because some people, when they close their eyes, they focus like in front of their nose.
I tried so much, Daniel. It's like trying to keep my eyes a little bit open so I don't like do this. I don't know the English word with my eyes, or like focus with my eyes. And so I think it comes from like forcing myself too much for like over a year, like of the Mind Illuminated. And
right, this is an old habit. Right, exactly. Well, you were taught to live your life like that. Americans do that. Europeans do that. Eastern Europeans really do that. Okay, so this is what we're getting out of, is we're beginning to figure out that, hey, we're the boss here. We don't have to perform in that rigid, uptight, getting along, proving that we're doing a good job mentality, and get into the mentality, hey, I don't have to know any of that stuff. I'm okay. Let me just sit here and breathe and relax and think about something that's happening right now.
So by moving, I don't build up agitation or whatever. It's like, fine, I can do it.
Right. Okay. But a lot of Buddhists have you're supposed to sit still.
Yeah, exactly. That's in my head. Like that's a rule to stand alive in my head.
and so they can sit still, but they don't enjoy it. Yeah, we're going to be taking all of that rigid uptightness out of it. And so if we need to move the body some to get it relaxed, then let's do that. Let's give ourselves a neck massage. Let's rub the face. Let's find out where that tension is and relax it.
Okay, good. That's what I want.
Because you've already won. You're already the winner. This is part of the. This is the victory lap. Okay, take a victory lap instead of being in the race. Well, guys, I think that this is a good time to finish this. I think that we've gotten something of value here.
Yeah.
That there's various ways of getting the sati going, and sati and the strength of it will give us the energy we need then to have the right effort. But then the effort gets easier. We keep practicing. We're practicing to relax.
4-4-2. I will try it.
Okay. Yeah, I'll try 4-4-2 and then 5-5-2. Okay.
But what if I have a gap?
What if?
Between what if I have a gap on the other side as well? Then I just don't mind it. I don't count it.
Yeah, it's okay. Don't worry. You don't have to figure it out. Experience it. Play with it as a toy.
All right. I'll do that.
Okay. All right, guys. Well, we'll see you again soon. I'm really happy to see you again, Marcel. It's been a while.
Yeah, it was amazing.
And I'm really glad to hear that you're back practicing, that you're doing it. That's great.
Yeah, it feels good.
Okay, well, we'll see you later.
Nice to meet you, Marcel. Okay,
yeah, nice to meet you. Bye.
Bye.